just want to review a debate between Tom Jump and Blake Speed, which was on Modern Day Debate. It's highly entertaining to some extent, but then it's extremely annoying in another sense. Um, I think Tom clearly has no respect. And you would think that because they're both atheists, that there would be some level of respect. There was absolutely no respect here, and I thought, well, this is just trash. Benjamin was within his right to be angry, in fact. And I want to kind of review that argument step by step, how not to argue. Because Tom is a masterclass douchebag. So without further ado, we're going to analyze clip by clip just what went wrong with this debate.
Oh, I think you might
You're
be
muted. You're muted.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. I would have just kept talking. So I first want to clarify some things about what you're saying, just so that we're clear enough.
So to offer some context, Blake and Tom just finished their opening statements, and so far it's been pretty respectful. As you can see, Tom mentioned that Blake's mic was muted, and Blake just laughed it off and thanked Tom for that. But unfortunately, things start going downhill very fast from here.
What we should do is we should use the definition of the term which most accurately represents the people who use it.
So
And
the language
whether-
game. So the rules to the language
Stop,
game.
stop,
everyone
Blake,
should
stop,
have
stop,
agreed to
stop,
the
stop,
same
stop for a
rules,
second. Stop for a
right?
second. So we should use the label, the definition that most accurately represents what the people who use the label mean it as, what to so accurately represent their position. Their position. Stop.
So notice how brash Tom is here. This isn't how you treat someone that you view with mutual respect. Now, if that person is interrupting you, you will say it politely and cordially and say, hey, sorry, can you give me a chance to continue my sentence? But in this way, stop. That's just completely counterproductive to a respectful conversation. And so you can see that here. But in Tom's defense, you could say, well, Blake did interrupt him. Yes, perhaps. But it's easy when you're having a video debate for there to be lags in certain times in which you think you could speak. So there's that. So I think Tom should be far more gracious here than he is, and clearly he's not. And part of the reason for this is that Tom makes his career almost of debating. And when that happens, a lot of this can get to your head, and you start becoming a lot more abrasive, and you start thinking of yourself as better. You start being more focused on what you want to say than what your opponent wants to say, or how you want to convince that person, because at the end of the day, it's all about winning the debate. And I think that's the pitfall that Tom slips into, clearly. So I would suggest, if you're debating on religion on YouTube, do not stop someone from interrupting you in the way that Tom is doing, unless you want to have a very poor debate.
The question on the debate is, what definition should we use? Well, we should use the ones that the people who adopt the label use.
And so my position is no, that it should be the one that uses the language game that best helps us answer the question, does God exist?
And that's
So
just
I'm
false. That's not
pursuing
how
the
language
truth
works.
for its own sake. So it seems like you're playing a different game. You're playing like what you would find in the court of law, where all you're trying to do is defeat the theist. And so it's just a different game.
No, I'm just
You're right. You can play that different game, but
no, there's no game here. It's just the way words
language
work.
game. Yes.
No, there's no game here. This is the way
That's the
words
metaphor,
work.
though.
No, I know the metaphor. I don't care.
Now, when Tom says, I don't care, that just proves everything I said in the prior statement. He does not care about what his opponent's saying. He's not even trying to. You don't say that to somebody, you're trying to understand, you're trying to respect. This is a disrespectful tone, clearly an arrogant one. And Blake is actually absolutely right about Tom. If they're playing two different language games, if I may interject my opinion here, because Blake is talking about what definition would help us more toward gaining truth. Now, Tom is all about what is the popular usage by most of these atheists. And the atheists he refers to are all about mocking atheism. They're all about trying to escape the burden of proof and win a debate and make themselves look smart. That's really what it is. And Blake gets to the heart of it in terms of this. That's the game that Tom is playing, in fact. That's why he's debating all these theists on his show, because he wants to write a book and he wants to show to his future publisher that he can destroy these ridiculous theists, even those with PhDs, that he's capable of doing this despite not having the proper education for it. So that's Tom's ultimate goal. It's important to keep that in mind because it really manifests in this debate in terms of what his persona is.
It is important. It's very important. I've framed the whole question of it, and it couldn't be more important, actually.
I don't care. So again, the correct way to use language is to accurately represent the people who adopt the label. That's it. That is the correct
But you
usage.
don't accurately represent the people who adopt the label.
Yes,
you
I do.
Accurately represent a small subset of people.
The majority and the most prevalent and the biggest organization.
No, not the most prevalent.
The most prevalent. Yes, correct.
No.
I thought this was hilarious because here you have Blake saying it's not the most prevalent, but then Tom says, yes, the most prevalent. Yes, correct. At this point, it's just a matter of who's saying it more loudly, who's saying it more confidently. And that's really not what a debate should be about. But let's see what happens next.
The most prevalent.
The most prevalent, yes, correct.
No, most prevalent would be everyday people who use the term normally like I'm using it. Those would be the most prevalent.
Most people don't use the term.
If we're talking about usage wins out, all the people who understand it my way, which is the majority of people, they win out.
No, most people don't even know what the word atheist means in general. The most of the people who do understand the term atheist are usually people who have adopted the label and actually looked into what it means, and they use it in the lack theist kind of a way.
Now, it is precisely at this point where I think Tom clearly lost the debate and Blake won. Because as Blake points out, what is the common usage? If you're trying to say that the word atheism should be defined by common usage, then common usage can also apply to how theists and how all Americans in general tend to use the word atheism. Atheism means a belief that there are no gods, or there is no God. That's the simple definition. Now what happened is that new atheists came along and redefined that. And what Tom is doing to avoid his conclusion, he's not using common usage in general. Rather, he's appealing to those who self-identify as atheists. He's trying to say that only those who self-identify as atheists get to define how it should be used or how it should be defined. And that's a serious problem because that's just not how language works. Language isn't just exclusively defined by those who self-identify with that term. It's also defined more primarily by how people in general use that term. And so Blake is absolutely right that most people in general understand that term to mean there is no God.
The second objection that I would put out there is this only answers part of the question. This allows new atheists and people like Tom to play the role of a pure skeptic. So they can hide the ball with their burdens of justification. The claims that they make, they just don't have to defend them because they're saying, no, my position is entirely negative, and they don't put anything positive forward, thus avoiding any sort of burdens of justification. I think that's just dishonest. I think it straightforwardly counts against that usage.
Okay, well, all that's just bullshit because none of that has anything to do with the definition.
You're interrupting, so hush.
Wow, this is unbelievable. You never do what Tom just did in debate unless you just kind of want to have complete disregard for the person you're debating with. And I think Blake was quite right to hush him because Tom was acting like a child here. If you want to have a respectful dialogue, if you're trying to aim at truth, you will not do this. But Tom is not aiming at truth, and that's why he's more inclined to this particular definition of atheism. And Blake is completely right. He's completely right. You see, this form of dishonesty that Blake is talking about can be readily seen when we see Tom Jump compare theism to fairy tales or the spaghetti monster or something of that sort, which we know do not exist. These are fictional entities, and it seems perfectly legitimate to say so. And no one's like has lack of belief in Santa Claus. We simply say Santa Claus does not exist. And in the same way, we would do that for God, because if you evaluated all the arguments for God and found them lacking, and if you surveyed throughout the universe what you could, and you don't see any evidence of God, you can rightly say that, well, this is this is evidence that God does not exist. You can't say it's absolute proof. You can't say necessarily perhaps that it's strong evidence, because evidence could come about in the future. But it seems to give a good indication, because something as big as God should have evidence. But Tom Jump wants to say he can have his cake and eat it too by saying it's a lack of belief, and yet compare it to fairy tales. You can't do that. You just can't, without being dishonest.
And then, of course, you beg the question against fideism, the view that thinks that faith is more important than reason. You're begging the question against them because those people come to the question. So the question is, are there any gods? You're saying, is there any good reason to believe there are any gods? The theist accepts that claim. So the theist, by your definition, is already considered an atheist, which is just absurd. So
notice how Tom is escalating his childish antics here. He's interrupting nope with a very smug, cocky attitude. And then as he yawns, he taps his mouth, showing he has no interest in what Blake is saying. This is what being a masterclass douche looks like, folks.
And so when they say the word atheist, that's just to accurately represent what they believe. You just have to use that definition. If you don't, you're straw manning and you're an idiot. As simple as that. That's what they mean by the term. That's the definition you have to use. As simple as that. Game over. That question.
The question tonight is, what should the definition of atheism be tonight? And you've given no relevant answer.
No, I answered the question specifically.
And you've given no reasons to believe that your view.
Were you not listening? Are you just deaf or dumb? Like, the answer is the correct definition of the word atheist is the one that most accurately represents what the people who adopt the label mean by the term.
But it doesn't. It just departs from the historical and ordinary.
The historical part is irrelevant. It doesn't.
No, it's not. No, it's
not.
Yes, it is. No, it's not.
Appeal to history.
No, it's not.
Goodbye fallacy. Dumb shit. Like, you can make the same argument and say,
I just love Blake's reaction. It's perfect. Tom's stream of insults are completely unnecessary, but as you can see, he has to demean and belittle his opponent. This is where we obviously see that the debate is a waste of time. If you want a productive debate, don't engage with a debate like this.
I have the ordinary sense of the term.
No.
Let's look it up in the dictionary, like you just suggested.
Okay, let's do that.
In Oxford Dictionary.
No, I'm going to go with Google. Definition: atheism. Disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God.
The disbelief or lack.
Oh, so damn.
Which is better? That's the question I brought us here to discuss, and you haven't given us an answer.
I did in the very first thing. You must have your head up your ass.
You gave us psychological facts about a small group of people that are completely irrelevant to answering our question.
So I shouldn't have to tell you that you shouldn't be sarcastic in the debate. You shouldn't call someone a dummy if you're trying to have a productive debate. And that is exactly what this debate is not at this point, especially. It's important to keep in mind then that Blake is pointing out that you can have these two definitions. You can have lack of belief or disbelief, but the question is which one is better. So from here on out, I'm just going to play a series of clips rather than comment on each one, and then I'm going to offer some final comments. So grab your popcorn and enjoy the show.
So it's an ordinary sense. So then you have to say which one is better for the language game in which we're playing.
Yes, and
if our language game is, does God exist? Mine is better.
No one cares what your language game is. The only meaningful
Okay, so you're playing a different language game. That's fine.
No, I don't give a shit about your language game crap. I'm not even going to address that because it's irrelevant.
Because you have nothing to say against it.
Corporations.
Now, of all the big, who are all the big?
American atheists, the humanists.
American atheists. So none of those have to do with an academic journal.
Academic journals.
None of those have to do with something within the academy.
Academic journals are the small niche of people who just don't matter to the definitions. The definitions are defined by the majority. The academic journals don't make a difference. Yeah, please go away because academic definitions are irrelevant.
Counterexample: a negative theist. There is a God unless there is reason to doubt.
Don't care. Again,
there's no reason to doubt a God.
Don't care.
You don't care.
Don't care. Do not.
So that's a stalemate. So
No,
that's
that's
another
just
way
irrelevant.
my view is better than
This
yours,
is
because
no. There's
such
nothing there.
stalemate would occur.
Nothing you said is relevant. All people who adopt
All atheists, they would be on my side.
No, they'd
All
be on my
atheists-
side.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely
I
not.
win.
It's an
You're
empirical
dumb.
fact.
You just be.
You can look
Yes,
it
it
up.
would. Yes, it is.
So
I
look
would
it
be
up.
correct. Yes.
Look it up. Go ahead.
All people who identify as the term atheist would be on my side.
No, you're
Yep.
no,
Yep.
you're just
Sorry.
empirically
I don't
wrong.
care. It's great. You can go bother somebody else with that nonsense.
If you're going to defend something like secular humanism, why are you doing that? Because you take it as true that there aren't any gods, or that God doesn't exist.
What
If
are
you
you
put
even talking about
something
here?
forward,
You
like
said nothing. You just
metaphysical
said
naturalism.
stop.
Why do you put forward that
You've
belief?
said all of these
Because you
places
believe that
disagree
there
with
aren't
me.
any
Stop.
gods.
You
Gods.
said stop.
You just want to avoid
stop,
your burden of
stop.
justification.
This has nothing to do with my
so
position at all.
it's my turn to talk.
I'm
I want you
asking
to
for
talk,
clarification
so shut up.
here. I'm asking for clarification here. You need to actually clear up what you've said.
I'm done.
1 second.
Please
I'm
do.
done.
Shut the
1
fuck up,
second.
please.
No, it's just false that the people who identify as atheists somehow get this monopoly on what the correct usage of the term means. No, the correct usage of the term is the one that's going to help us better answer the question, does God exist? Because that's the question that matters.
I mean, everything you just said is total bullshit. You could make the same exact arguments.
Everything I just said is total bullshit.
Everything.
Okay.
So you could say exactly verbatim everything he said for the correct usage of the word gay. It's only used by a minority of people. Oh, it's just not taking in the historical context of the term. No one gives a shit. Like, that's not how language works. You just don't understand language at all. You have your head up your ass. What?
The aim of a game, something can be better or worse in the achieving the aim of the game. You're saying that it's arbitrary, that the rules of that game can be whatever they just be whatever. So you're saying the implication of that is that reason cannot help us get what we want. That has
nothing to do with anything I
your
said.
view.
Like, no, just bullcrap. Like, there's no.
Yeah, great response. Good job.
Yes, it actually was, because what you just said is complete crap. Like, saying that.
The language game isn't about truth. Truth doesn't matter. Theists don't matter. Philosophy doesn't matter. I'll rest my case. That's no argument I could possibly present would be stronger against Tom than that one.
Yeah, that's how language works. It has nothing to do with truth. It's just about what the usage means, how people use it. Truth is irrelevant.
I get really frustrated with this type of debate because of people like Tom. I think I think they really hurt our movement. I think they really count against us, and I think Christians are right to point that out.
Gotcha.
Yes, people like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, they really hurt the movement. Like, oh my God, like, whoa, so they did such a terrible job for atheism.
In certain ways, they do. They very much do.
Oh, I'm so sad. I'm so sad to be in a group with such terrible figures.
I don't really care how you feel. Those are psychological facts.
I'm sure. I don't care. I don't care how you feel. I'm happy with the support of, logic and reason here.
Gotcha.
Cool. As you can see, Tom Jump is a masterclass douchebag. There's no doubt about it. Now, Blake was right to be irritated and upset, but I do think he should have quit much earlier. You shouldn't waste your time debating someone who thinks everything you're saying is BS. Now, the better response, if you disagree with Blake, is to say, well, help me understand what you're saying, because I honestly don't get it. Or, I strongly disagree for such and such reasons, rather than to resort to insults. Now, Blake made some really good points. I think it's very important to notice that Blake has no problem with using a word to describe individuals that only claim a lack of belief. If your purpose is to describe a psychological fact about a group of people, Blake thinks that's perfectly fine. But Blake's point is that for the purposes of discovering truth, which definition is better? And it seems clear that if we ask, does God exist or not, there are only two possible answers. God exists, or he does not. So with respect to metaphysical truth, it is irrelevant what people's epistemic or psychological state is. Now, Tom himself says that he thinks truth is irrelevant to language, which is interesting because when he says there is no evidence for God's existence, he seems to be using language to make a truth statement. Unless, of course, he's making no truth claims at all, in which case the theist need not bother talking with him. If Tom tried to understand Blake's position, he'd realize that Blake was not saying Tom's definition was absolutely wrong. Tom's definition has its place, but it has no place in the discovery of truth and in discussions about truth and of God's existence. So, that concludes this episode of Walking Christian. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share any thoughts in the comment section below and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.